Have you ever looked inside a USB port and noticed that small piece of plastic sitting right in the middle? It almost looks like it's blocking the opening. In fact, if you've ever tried plugging in a USB cable the wrong way 3 times in a row as tradition demands, you may have blamed that little plastic piece for your troubles. But that tiny component, often called the plastic tongue, is actually one of the most important parts of the entire USB connector. Without it, USB devices wouldn't be able to transfer data, receive power, or even connect properly in the first place. So why is it there? Why does it have to stick out into the middle of the port? And why did engineers choose this design when USB became the universal connector for computers and electronics? Let's take a closer look at the surprisingly important story behind one of the smallest parts of modern technology, right here on History of Simple Things. Before USB arrived in the 1990s, connecting devices to computers was often a frustrating experience. Printers used one type of port, mice used another, keyboards used another, and many devices required their own specialized connectors. Setting up hardware could be confusing, especially for everyday users. To simplify things, a group of major technology companies including Intel, Microsoft, IBM, and Compaq worked together to create the Universal Serial Bus, better known as USB. The first USB standard was introduced in 1996 with the goal of providing a single connector for a wide variety of devices. The design needed to be inexpensive, durable, easy to manufacture, and capable of carrying both power and data. To achieve those goals, engineers developed the familiar rectangular USB connector that many people still use today. The most important job of the plastic tongue is supporting the metal contacts inside the connector. If you look carefully into a standard USB-A port, you'll see several thin metal strips attached to the top or bottom of the plastic piece. These metal strips are the actual electrical contacts that allow communication between devices. When you plug in a USB cable, matching contacts inside the plug press against these strips. This creates the electrical connection needed to transfer files, send commands, or deliver power. Without the plastic tongue, those delicate contacts would have nowhere to sit. They would be exposed, vulnerable to damage, and much harder to align correctly. Think of the tongue as the foundation of a bridge. The bridge itself may get all the attention, but without the structure underneath, nothing would stay in place. Another important purpose of the tongue is guiding the USB plug into the correct position. USB connectors need extremely precise alignment. The metal contacts inside the plug must line up perfectly with the contacts inside the port. Even a small mismatch can prevent the connection from working. The tongue acts like a guide rail. As the plug slides into the port, the opening inside the USB connector fits around the plastic piece. This naturally positions everything where it needs to be. Without this guide, the contacts could miss each other entirely or make unreliable connections. Data transfer errors and charging problems would become much more common. In other words, the tongue doesn't just hold the contacts, it helps ensure they meet exactly where they're supposed to. There's another safety benefit hidden inside that small piece of plastic. The electrical contacts inside a USB connector carry power and data signals. If those contacts accidentally touched each other, they could create a short circuit or interfere with communication. Because plastic is an electrical insulator, the tongue keeps the contacts separated and properly spaced apart. It acts as a barrier that prevents unwanted electrical connections. This is especially important because USB ports are constantly exposed to dust, movement, vibration, and thousands of insertion cycles throughout their lifetime. The plastic structure helps maintain the integrity of the connector even after years of use. You may have noticed that USB tongues come in different colors. Originally, many USB ports used white or black plastic. As USB technology evolved, manufacturers began using colors to help identify different versions and capabilities. Blue often indicates USB 3.0 or faster data transfer standards. Teal, red, yellow, and other colors may indicate specialized features such as higher charging power or manufacturer-specific functions. Interestingly, the color itself doesn't affect performance. The plastic tongue would work exactly the same if it were any other color. The color is mainly there to help users quickly recognize certain types of ports. It's a simple visual shortcut that became common as USB technology grew more complex. Modern USB-C connectors still contain an internal plastic structure, but it looks very different from the older USB-A design. Instead of placing the tongue inside the port, USB-C places many of the contacts on a central structure that allows the connector to be inserted either way up. This reversible design solves one of the most common frustrations people had with older USB connectors. However, the underlying principle remains the same. Engineers still need a durable insulating structure to support the contacts, maintain alignment, and protect the electrical connections. The shape changed, but the purpose did not. That little plastic tongue inside a USB port may seem insignificant, but it performs several critical jobs at once. It supports the electrical contacts, guides the connector into place, prevents short circuits, and helps the port survive years of everyday use. It's a perfect example of how good engineering often goes unnoticed. Most people never think about that tiny piece of plastic until they see it up close. Yet without it, one of the world's most successful technology standards simply wouldn't work. Sometimes the smallest parts are doing the biggest jobs behind the scenes. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.